Good morrow, lords and ladies, and it gives me great pleasure to once again bid you welcome. So here we are as we continue our studies of medieval Europe, and in today's session, we'll look at a little section that I call the Return of the Kings. Why do I call it that? Well, if you recall, for most of the medieval period, kings are weak little weenies who rule in name only. Well, now we're going to see them make a comeback, and in today's session, we're going to see how that happens. So we're going to be looking at three different kingdoms: England, France, and the Holy Roman Empire. And the main focus is really going to be on England because things taking place in England are going to have the biggest long-term impact on us here in the United States. So when we start with England, we'll go way back in their history to Anglo-Saxon England, and we'll meet a king named Alfred the Great and figure out what makes him so important and also where England gets its name. Then we'll move on to the Norman conquest of England, and we will see how people from the area of France called Normandy, led by their great conqueror William, the Duke of Normandy, end up invading and taking over England. And William, as king, creates this thing called the Great Council. We'll figure out what it is, what it's for, and what it eventually becomes in England. It'll become something very important, a very important political institution in England. We'll see what that is. Then we get into the biggie, the biggest part of this, and that's the Magna Carta. This is the thing that's most important to the long-term history of the United States even. So we'll figure out what the Magna Carta is and how England's king, John, was forced to sign this document. Then we'll figure out what makes it so darn important to us. It's something that's important, again, not just to England, but to representative governments around the world, including our own. And as a result, what kind of government is England evolving into? Then, finally, we'll spend a little bit of time on France and the Holy Roman Empire. That'd be Germany, by the way. And we'll just see what the governmental situations look like in those places during this time. So those are the essential questions. Thus, without further ado, let's get to it. Let's begin. All right, so Middle Ages. Feudalism has led kings to become rulers in name only. They don't have any real power. The real power rests in the hands of the nobles. We have very decentralized government, but during the 1100s, we're going to see a lot of European kings begin to build strong kingdoms again, strong states with strong centralized governments. And as I said, the focus is going to be on England. But to really get this story, we've got to go back. We've got to go back pretty far. Let's go all the way back to Roman Britain. And in the 400s, as the Roman Empire is collapsing, the Romans withdraw from England. And when the Romans leave England, the islands become pretty much a free-for-all. And a number of different Germanic groups at different times invade and control the islands. The Angles, the Saxons, the Danes, Vikings, Jutes, it's just craziness. Until finally, in 886, an Anglo-Saxon king by the name of Alfred the Great, comes to power. And he unites most of the people in the island under one banner, defeats the Vikings, and creates this kingdom that comes to be called Angleland, the land of the Angles, Angleland, or as we know it today, England. This is what makes Alfred the Great great and what makes him important, and that's where England gets its name, from Angleland. Well, the kings that followed after Alfred were weak. They were back to that whole weenie state of affairs. And when the last Anglo-Saxon king, Edward the Confessor, dies in 1066, he has no children. And since he dies with no children, you have three separate rivals who all claim the throne of England for themselves. First, you have Harold Godwinson. He's contestant number one. He is a powerful English nobleman, and he claims that Edward promised the throne to him. And all the other English nobles back him up on this claim, and they basically kind of vote him to be the new king of England. Contestant number two is a Viking king, Harald Hardrada. He really is the last of the great Viking warriors, and he's the powerful king of Norway. He claims that Edward had been his cousin, and that Edward had promised the throne to him. Convenient how all this is working out, isn't it? Finally, contestant number three is William the Duke of Normandy. Based in Normandy, France, William claims the throne once again because he says that Edward was his cousin and that Edward had promised the throne to him. Three claimants, only one of them can be king, so you're about to have a knockdown, drag-out battle royal where only one will emerge as the new king of England. And it's Harold Hardrada who strikes first. He attacks first by invading England from the north. And Harold Godwinson, the acting king, in a desperate bid, rallies his armies, goes to the north, and meets Harold Hardrada in battle. And surprisingly, the English defeat the Vikings at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. And at this battle, Harold Hardrada is killed by a well-placed arrow to the neck. His army breaks and flees, and victory belongs to Harold Godwinson. England appears safe, kind of, for now. That is, until a little bit later on, when William the Duke of Normandy invades England from the south with 6,000 men. While Godwinson is busy engaged in the north, this is when the Duke of Normandy makes his move. Well, hearing about this, Harold Godwinson now force marches his army to the south of England so they can meet this invasion head on. And in October of 1066, Harold Godwinson and William, the Duke of Normandy, will engage in the final battle for control of England. At the Battle of Hastings, the invading Normans and the English army go head-to-head all day long. It's a back-and-forth struggle, but eventually the fresher troops prevail as the Normans break through the English lines, and Harold Godwinson himself is felled by an arrow straight to the eyeball. With the death of their king, the army breaks and flees, and victory belongs to William, the Duke of Normandy, now called by many William the Conqueror, and by even more as King William I of England. And he is the last person to successfully invade and conquer England. No one has ever done it since. A couple have tried, but no one has successfully invaded England since the Norman invasion in 1066. Well, now as king, William the Conqueror brings feudalism to England. England did not have feudalism before. It was a strong central government, and it will be again, but now they're going to introduce feudalism because William takes land that had belonged to the English church and he disperses it among his nobles to create feudal states. And with his feudal states now, or his feudal nobles now established in England, William creates a body called the Great Council. The Great Council is it's a group of royal officials, knights, nobles, bishops, and it is their job to advise the king, help him make decisions. And in some cases, if King William has a hard time making a decision, he might just say to the council, hey, let's vote on it. What do you guys think? Eventually, this Great Council is going to evolve into England's Parliament. Today, Parliament is the legislative branch of England's government. Parliament makes the laws for England the same way that our Senate and our House of Representatives makes the laws for the United States. So what began as an advisory body, the Great Council, eventually becomes England's Parliament. And we'll sort of see that evolutionary process take place as we move on here. Okay, little sidetrack for just a minute here. Going to meet a lovely lady who's very important in Europe during this time, and her name is Eleanor. Eleanor of Aquitaine, and she is indeed the most eligible bachelorette in medieval Europe. Why is she the most eligible bachelorette? Well, when her daddy died, she was his only child, and so she was left with control of all of his land. This area down here, what is today part of France, was at the time a rich province known as Aquitaine. It had originally been a Roman province, and now it was sort of a feudal area. Well, with Dad dead, control of Aquitaine goes to Eleanor. Why does this make her the most eligible bachelorette? Because whoever marries her gets that land. And at the age of 15, young Eleanor married King Louis VII of France. And so that territory now became part of the French kingdom. And they were married for 15 years. And it was 15 years of brutal, dull marriage, and they hated each other's guts. And Eleanor gave birth to 3 kids, but none of them were boys. So after 15 years of unhappy marriage and no boys, they divorced. And no sooner than their divorce was finalized, she married this guy, the great-grandson of William the Conqueror, Prince Henry II of England, who was about to become King Henry of England. And when she married him, that land, Aquitaine, now became part of England. And so the Kingdom of England now stretches not just through the British Isles, but into half of what is present-day France. That's going to be important a little bit later on here. And Eleanor will give birth to 8 more kids. That's 11 total, by the way. And 3 of those kids, sons, will all become kings of England. And 2 of those sons Richard and John would become two of England's more famous kings, although not necessarily for good reasons. King Richard is known mostly for the role he played in the Third Crusade. We'll see him a little bit later on in another session. And King John is known largely for being kind of a tyrannical buffoon who doesn't do a very good job of ruling anything. I mean, realistically, both of them are known to history for being ineffective rulers. And John, for his part, lost a large portion of England's territory to the French. He loved to fight wars, but as it turned out, he wasn't any good at it. And you remember all that land that England had in France that they gained through the marriage of Eleanor? Well, John loses a lot of it. And when you lose wars, that really makes you unpopular as a leader. Oh, and then when he turns around and raises a lot of heavy taxes to pay for all the wars that he keeps losing, that makes him even more unpopular. Furthermore, any nobles who spoke out against his policies were typically arrested and imprisoned without any just cause or without a trial, the only cause being, you talked about me and I don't like it. Well, nobles see themselves as losing their feudal rights by the actions of John, and there's not a whole lot that they can really do. They don't want to rebel because they don't see a better replacement for him, so they decide to take a more radical course. They want to try to limit him. And so these nobles meet in this meadow called Runnymede in England in 1215. And here they drafted a document called the Magna Carta. In Latin, it means the Great Charter. And they force the king to sign it. Now, how can they do this? How can they force the king to sign this document? Remember, this is feudalism, and as much as you have a centralized government in England, the king still needs the nobles and their armies. So they do have some sway over him. So they force John to sign the Magna Carta. And the purpose of the Magna Carta is to limit the king, limit the power of the monarchy in order to protect the feudal rights of the nobles. And the Magna Carta establishes that now the king cannot do whatever he wants. Instead, the king shall be bound by law. The king cannot collect or levy any taxes without the consent of the Great Council. The Great Council has to vote on it and approve it first before those taxes can become law. Additionally, the Magna Carta stated that the king cannot place freemen, that'd be men who own land, basically nobles, can't place them in jail without a trial. So let me get this straight. No taxation without representation and no punishment without a trial by jury? That should sound really familiar, America. Now, the Magna Carta is considered to be one of the most important documents in all of history, because as time would go on, it would guarantee the rights not just of nobles, but of all English people. And it would foster two very important political concepts that will be vitally key to the future of American political ideology, and that is limited government and representative government. The idea that government has limits, it is not all-powerful, it is bound by law, and that government should be representative of the governed, representative of the voice of the people that it governs. And as time goes on, by the early 1300s, England is evolving, it's progressing, towns are beginning to grow, and a new social class called the middle class is beginning to emerge. And the middle class is very unique in the feudal world because they don't make their money from feudal manors like the nobles do. They make their money from trade and from business, and this makes them very important and very powerful. And so in recognition of the growing power of the middle class, King Henry III adds the middle class to his Great Council. And by now the Great Council is being called Parliament. And thus, through documents like the Magna Carta and through legislative bodies like Parliament, England is evolving into a limited monarchy with a representative government. Okay, what about France and the Holy Roman Empire? Real quick, let's buzz through these. So, like England, France is developing a strong centralized government. In 987, a powerful French noble by the name of Hugh Capet, who controls the land around the city of Paris, he overthrows the weak Carolingian monarch, makes himself king. This begins a new dynasty in France, the Capetian dynasty. Unlike England's limited monarchy, though, France is going to develop into an absolute monarchy where their kings are all powerful and can do whatever they want. Now, in Germany, we have the Holy Roman Empire, which is not holy, not Roman, and not an empire. But while kings in England and France are building those strong governments, rulers in the Holy Roman Empire / Germany are unable to do the same. Strong central government does not develop in Germany because of constant conflicts between the Holy Roman Emperor and the powerful German nobles. The Holy Roman Emperor just cannot control those nobles. Additionally, power struggles between the emperors and the popes further undermine the power of German rulers. They constantly quarrel with the Pope over who has the authority to appoint bishops. And so as a result of all this, Germany, not developing a strong central government, will remain a fractured land that does not unite into one nation until the mid-1800s. Wow, that hurts. Okay, we made it through to the end here, guys. We looked at three kingdoms, England, France, and Germany, and we kind of saw how each was developing governmentally. We obviously spent more time on England because of its importance to our history, the Magna Carta, of course, being specifically most important to that. We saw England is developing into a limited government and representative government, while France is becoming an absolute monarchy and Germany is becoming something else entirely. Pay attention to those essential questions. You need to study them and be ready to talk about them the next time that we meet. As always, though, until that time, I bid you farewell.